Hi guys, I'm here with a video showing you how I made my Cheerleader Kim Possible costume. Getting right to it, I first started out by drawing up the patterns for the skirt and the top and then cutting it out in all of the different colored fabric that it needs to be cut out in. To make the patterns, I used the duct tape method except for the skirt, which was I think it's called a box pleated skirt, and those were just various sizes of squares or rectangles. To get the size of the squares, I took the measurement where I wanted the skirt to sit, which was partway between my hip and waist, and then divided that up evenly into about 6 panels, I believe. There was like 6 or 7. If you want to skip patterning, these patterns are available on my website, and when it comes to the skirt, if you need to adjust the measurements, just take away an even amount from each square, or add an equal amount to each square if you need to increase the size. Once everything was cut out, I pinned the front and back of the top piece together, right sides together, and sewed along the side seam and the seams at the shoulder. I also added darts on either side at the bust area to help it curve and keep the sleeves from having this weird, like, gappy opening to them. I guess not sleeves, but the areas where the armholes. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Instead of doing the normal thing to finish off the hem lines, where you like roll it over twice and sew it down, I decided to use bias tape, mostly because along the neckline and the bottom of the top, it needs to be orange. So just to keep with the bias tape theme, I used purple bias tape to finish off the armholes, or the hem around the armholes. And then, like I just mentioned, I used orange bias tape to finish the hem around the neckline and the bottom. When it came to the armholes and the neckline, I believe my bias tape was 1/2 inch wide, if I'm remembering right, and along the bottom it was 1 inch wide. Once I had the purple bias tape pinned into place, I just sewed that down before moving on to the next set of bias taped areas. Next, I pinned the orange bias tape around the neck line and sewed that down. And after that, I pinned the larger orange bias tape around the bottom of the shirt and then sewed that down. After that, the top was finished and it was time to move on to the skirt. To start off with the skirt, I started by pinning the orange panels to the purple panels because the purple section of her skirt has this pretty wide orange bottom. Too wide for like a piece of bias tape to go there, so I made that out of fabric, and I used a ruler to help me make sure that I was setting the orange section at the same height on every panel so that they looked as even as I could possibly get them. I made sure to fold over the edge along the top and bottom of the orange section as I pinned it into place. Once all of those panels were pinned into place, I sewed along the top and bottom section with a straight stitch. I rolled over the bottom edge of all of the yellow panels as well and sewed those down. Then I ironed everything to make sure that everything was laying nice and flat and all of the hems were pressed. Next, I pinned the purple and orange panels to the yellow panels, alternating between the two and lining them up along the bottom edge, since that is the edge that already has a finished hem to it. Then I sewed all of those together using a straight stitch. After that, I had to cut off excess along the top of the purple and orange panels because when I was cutting out my fabric, I messed up on how much seam allowance I gave each panel and it ended up being off. You might not have to do this if you don't make the same mistake I did. After that, I needed to fold in my pleats, and this is a box pleat that I'm trying to create. I didn't really look up how to do this, so if I'm not doing this the way people normally do, forgive me. I'm just using my own method, and what I did was fold my panels so that the two purple panels touched each other and the yellow panels were folded in half, and then I marked that center line where the yellow panel was folded in half, unfolded all of the panels, and then folded in one of the purple panels to that center line on the yellow panel, and then folded the other half or the other side of the purple panel to, I guess it's not the other side, the other purple panel on the other side of the yellow panel. I folded that to meet the purple panel across from it in the center, if that makes sense. Hopefully watching this video, it makes sense as you can see what I'm doing rather than just hear me try to explain it. But basically I want to line the purple panels on either side of a yellow panel together at the center of the yellow panels and fold the yellow panels so that it's like split in half evenly between the two. And then I pin all of that down and repeat this until all of the yellow panels are folded behind the purple panels. And I pinned this down because I want it to all stay in place until after I finished sewing these into place and ironing them down. Once all of the panels are pinned in the way that I need them to be pinned, I go ahead and sew along the very top to sew all of the pleats down into that position so that they stay put, as well as I sew just a tiny bit down the edge of each purple pleat, about like an inch or so down, and then sew back up and go across again, making sure that the yellow panels aren't getting like messed up at all, because sometimes your machine might try to like fold the fabric under itself and you want to avoid that. While I have my sewing machine out again, I go ahead and sew together the orange waistband and press that seam open as well. Once I've finished sewing all of the pleats into place, as much as I am going to sew them into place, because obviously you don't want to sew all the way to the bottom, they need to be able to like open so you can see the pop of yellow between the purple panels, I go ahead and press those down really, really well with my iron and using a bit of steam, because this is all like cottony fabric, and I find that that helps really set cotton fabric when you use a bit of steam. Then I pin my waistband to my skirt. I pin the center of the waistband to what will be one side of my skirt, so like the side of my hip, and then the other side's going to be left open for now because that's where a zipper will go, or that's where I intended for a zipper to go, but you'll see how that turns out. So my waistband is like double layered, and I originally intended to like encase the raw edge in the waistband. but I got a little bit too lazy for that, so I ended up just pinning right sides together and sewing that into place. Into that excess yellow panel that you saw hanging off the edge there, I did a similar thing where I kind of folded it in half and then folded it back so that half of that was under the purple panel the same way as I did the other panels, and then I cut it in half so that I could attach the other half to the other side, and I was going to put a zipper in that panel, but I ended up just skipping that entirely and just sewing that seam shut, so I could have totally just left that together and not have cut it open at all and just sewed one big circle. But if you're installing a zipper, you're probably going to want to do something similar where you have to cut a panel in half at some point and put a zipper in that place instead. Anyways, here I'm just pressing down that newly added pleat, and I sewed that into place as well by this point. So go ahead and iron down the waistband and the seam along the waistband to make sure everything's lying nice and flat and looks really neat from the outside, even though on the inside it doesn't look the neatest. The next thing I did was pin the skirt together, right sides together, and close up the seam where I was originally going to put a zipper in. I ended up not putting a zipper in because honestly I got lazy. I didn't want to add one, and I found out that I could just pull this up over my hips if I wiggled a bit anyways, so I didn't really need one to get in and out of it. So I opted to just skip it and sew that seam shut with a straight stitch instead, and then obviously pressed that seam open as well so that everything lied nice and flat, and that finishes up the skirt. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a lovely day, found this video helpful, and bye!